Hi, folks. This module now is going to continue sort of where the last one left off. But we think that you'll like. The last module was sort of theoretical. That's okay. We need some theory sometime. But now we're going to get a little bit more applied, and I'm sure you'll like that too. So the theme of this module is about what we call stabilization policy. How can the central bank and the government help bring about macroeconomic stability? But precisely what does that mean? Well, in the last section, we learned how shocks can have impacts on the economy. We talked about shocks to spending, for example, as one force that might draw us away from a desirable macroeconomic position. We'd like to have the economy at what we decided full employment, or the natural rate of employment of resources, including the employment of labor. We could be facing a shock of increased spending that heats the economy up too much. So the objective would be to cool the economy back down. And as we'll see, policymakers can help neutralize that shock through a combination of fiscal policy, for example, cuts in government spending, raising taxes, stuff designed to reduce aggregate demand, and also monetary policy. In this case, it would be what we call a tightening up, a reduction of money supply. However, it's more often a concern when the shock to spending is downwards. So let's give an example. We have referred to the great financial crisis that most believe started in 2007, but really came into fruition in 2008 and 2009. Now, going down to the household level, people in households saw things that were happening, and they weren't good things. Their house prices were falling, sometimes so much that their mortgages were worth more than their house value. We used to say that those people were underwater. Okay, more than that, people began losing their jobs, or they began to fear that they were going to lose their jobs. So, when this kind of fear and nervousness sets in, people begin to behave differently. How so? Well, one key element is that they begin to spend less. Households started to rein in their expenditures, and you've heard of that expression, saving for a rainy day. Well, apparently people began to see rain on the horizon, so they pulled back their expenditures big time, especially on big ticket items. That's a great example of the kind of shocks we introduced in the last module. And as we previously learned, things don't end with that initial shock. They start in one place, those shocks, and in this case households, but they have implications for other sectors and other areas of the economy. And we talked about the multiplication of those shocks. So it should not come as a big surprise that firms also pulled in their investment expenditures a large degree as a consequence of the downturn in household spending. Capital investment projects that might have been appropriate for better times, in many cases, those plans were just canceled. And housing construction, another kind of investment, what we call residential investment, well, they fell through the floor since there was already a huge glut or excess inventory of vacant homes that could not be sold. So in this case, what is the objective of the government? The objective of the government is to prevent the economy from falling into an extreme recession, maybe even a depression. We want to keep the economy from going too far down into the dumps. Again, there's a likely role for policy here. Policymakers will try to neutralize that shock through a combination of fiscal policy. They might replace some of the lost demand through government spending, but they also might cut taxes, putting money in people's pockets so that they'll spend more. But also, this is where we have room for monetary policy to loosen up, even increase the money supply. So you can see here the theme. The shocks can destabilize the economy. They can make it run too hot or too cold. But fiscal and monetary policy can help neutralize those shocks. They work in the other direction in order to keep the economy from veering so far away from that happy medium, what we call full employment. And what's our tool to analyzing shocks and the neutralizing responses? Well, it's the ISLM model, the very same one that we learned in the previous module. So we got to prepare now. We're going to put the ISLM to work, including in your memo assignment, where you'll be asked to analyze shocks and the policy responses. And that's the real world question that we face all the time. For example, if the economy falls in a recession, what should we do? Increase government spending, cut taxes, increase the money supply? Well, that's what this module is about. So let's get going. Thanks a lot.